Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, alongside, as always, back in the nation's capital. Hello, Scott.
Sean, I'm glad I didn't stay.
Yeah, not the most inspiring of finals to the Brier this evening. So I think he probably made the correct decision.
Yeah, I think so. It's in a lot of ways I was rooting for a great finish down to the end, but this way, I'm able to ease a bit more into my nighttime routine. Not so worked up, and yeah, we've got a Brier champion.
We have a Brier champion. Before we get into that, Scott, I think the pressing question that everybody wants to know is, of course, Sunday is the traditional media game at these events. Scott, were you invited to participate in the 2020 Tim Hortons Brier media game this morning?
Sean, I found out about the media game from our mom, who texted me and said, "Are you playing in the media game?"
Oh, that is stone cold.
Rough. But no, I talked to Lori and Mary today, and Lori was able to make it to the game. So she represented the podcast segment.
Okay. Well, she was one of the skips in the game, so I just assumed she was one of the organizers.
Oh, no, I don't think so. They both did say it wasn't very well advertised, to the point where they weren't sure it was still on. Oh. But Lori decided she would show up anyway and see.
Okay, interesting.
So they had 8 people there. The team skipped by Lori won the game, and fun was had by all.
Allegedly. We don't know because you weren't invited.
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. I wasn't invited. Next time.
Yes, next time. So it's too bad. I know you couldn't have played anyway, but it would have been nice to be asked, right?
It's always a pleasure to be nominated, or an honor to be nominated, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that happened this morning, but with the time change, it would have been tough.
Oh boy, I had a nice relaxing morning, got some food, got some coffee.
Yeah.
Packed up my gear, sort of eased into it.
Good stuff.
And made my way over to the arena for the semifinals.
Yeah, so let's talk about the semifinal before we get into the final this afternoon. Saskatchewan against Newfoundland and Labrador. Matt Dunstone, of course, losing the 1-2 game to Brendan Botcher yesterday, and Brad Gushue getting through Northern Ontario in the 3-4 game last night. I felt, Scott, that this game was, it was more interesting than what we got in the final for sure, but I also felt, or I never really felt like Saskatchewan was going to win at any point, but I don't know, how did it feel in the building?
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty accurate description of how it felt in the building, when Gushue got his 3 in the first end, or the second end rather, to take the lead after forcing Dunstone to a single. It sort of seemed like an inevitability that they would win.
Right.
You're not going to come back from that. No, credit to Saskatchewan. They crawled back, and in the 5th, it looked like they were going to tie until Brad Gushue made a ridiculous shot that made the blank available. He had to play like a slash double, or these are things that you're like, what? How did really?
Yeah,
man. And so because it looked like they were going to get their deuce back, and so they had to go with the blank there, and then you got the break. The 5th end break. The ice is a little bit different in the 6th, as always. He's not able to capitalize, only gets his 1. I think that was the real turning point of the game there, because if Saskatchewan's able to tie it up, then I feel like there's no momentum at that point, right? It's sort of been back and forth, and neither team would have grabbed onto anything. But that big shot by Gushue in the 5th really got the crowd fired up, and you felt like from there was no stopping him.
Yeah, I completely agree. You mentioned that 3 and 2. What was crazy about that as well is the rock that he was hitting, like that Matt Dunstone draws, they didn't put it exactly where they wanted, but it was fully buried behind a rock in the 12-foot. And and Gushue comes down with like just a little more than backline weight and pushes it through. And that's the sort of shot that Brad Gushue, you know, if you don't want to leave Matt Dunstone like a big high, like a high heater that, you know, he can make 8 stones move. You don't want to leave him that. You don't want to leave Brad Gushue like a little hack weight something, because he's going to make it. That shot was very, very impressive to me. And yeah, then that force in the 6th, so that Gushue is up 1, playing 7 with the hammer. They get the blank there. They get forced in 8. And then Scott, the 9th end was very interesting because it was set up to blank. It was, you know, after a couple doubles and everything, there's one Matt Dunstone rock when Gushue goes to throw his last, and there's nothing else in play. And Gushue opts to play a little tap on it when he could have just hit it out, gone with the blank, been up 2 without the hammer. But essentially they elect to give Matt Dunstone 2 there, and they want the hammer coming home in a tie game. What was the sense in the building of what was going on? I could imagine that there was some confusion from a lot of the folks in the crowd there.
Yeah, there was definite confusion. There was some confusion. I was sitting with some of the volunteers, and they were thinking, what the heck are they talking about? Why, like, what is the question here? And I sort of thought they might like draw wide side to say, okay, like, you're going to take 2. But I like the call they ended up with a little more, right? If they're a little bit light and they freeze, it's going to be a tough 2 that way. And the ideal in that situation is to get a mistake and force them.
Yes.
So the shot that they played, I really liked. And, you know, looking at the statistics, if you're tied with hammer, you're going to win 75% of the time.
Yep, something like that.
And then up 2 without, let me see here, with one end remaining.
I believe it's about the same.
It's, looking here, it's like almost 90%.
Okay.
So if you're up 2 points, yeah, it's like a 90%. So in that situation, Gushue, what I think he felt was he thought he would take his chance to be one up with hammer, and have the 90% chance on a one up with hammer based on these analytics I'm looking at. And if he was tied with the hammer, so be it. But at least he would have the hammer in the last end. And yeah, I can't really disagree with that.
No, that was the discussion for sure, and something that they were very comfortable with. And after the game, both he and Gallant talked about that given what Matt Dunstone has done this week, they did not want to give him any chance with the last one in the game. They thought if Brad had the last shot in the game, they were going to win. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's a risky strategy for sure, but Brad also said after the game that they've had a couple dicey 10th ends this week where the other team has had the hammer, and even if when they've been up 2, that they've had shots available to the other team for 3, and they didn't want to leave anything for Dunstone for that to happen. And you know, we saw it even a little bit last night in the 9th end, I believe it was, where he had to play a hit and roll to get out of a lot of trouble against Northern Ontario. So we've seen them open the door to other teams in these situations where you think you just keep it open, you keep it clean. You know, the teams have had opportunities against them. So a risky play, I think, but the way they did it was, I agree, it was really smart. You know, because if he just dead freezes, Dunstone can easily blast everything out for a blank there. By having separation between the rocks, you make it harder if Matt Dunstone wants to blank it. And at the same time, you tempt him into getting the deuce. Because if I'm Matt Dunstone, I'm down 2. It's pretty tempting to take the 2.
Sure. They clearly wanted to blank, but
yes.
To me, sure, like maybe you can set something up to get your 3 and 10, right? But in all likelihood, what you're going to be hoping for is a chance to score 2 in 10 and then steal in the extra anyway. So I guess, like, yeah, you take your risk that maybe you won't be able to get the 3 in the next end, but at the same point, it's kind of like, to me, 6-1, whatever. You get your 2 here, it's like you're playing an extra end anyway.
Right. I think the real risk is stuffing something on a blank attempt when there was that much separation between the rocks.
Yeah. So, like, a really smart call by Team Newfoundland.
Yeah. So in the 10th end, played the way you would expect it. Lots of peels, pretty wide open, and then Brad Gushue has a draw, full 8-foot. Prefer to touch the 4 to win. I gotta say, the crowd, Scott, treated this one very casually. They were cheering halfway down the ice like he had made it. And Braden Moskowy comes out and, got it to the back 8-foot. It was heavy, but the crowd, honestly, he probably could have put it in the hack and the crowd would have walked out thinking Gushue had won, I think.
You might be right, Sean. I had typed out the tweet already. I was just, hovering to push send there. Yeah, it was a little dicey, but you never expect Brad Gushue to miss those kinds of shots.
You do not, and he didn't.
And, well, to speak to what you were saying just before about the not wanting to give Dunstone the hammer, that's what happened to them in the last game of the championship round. Dunstone got 2 with hammer when he was down 1 and beat them. So, like, a lot of credit for thinking that. Thinking their way through to be able to have Brad throw the last rock.
Yeah, so really well played there. They get the win. Newfoundland Labrador 7-6 is the final, and a visibly emotional Matt Dunstone. You could see it on the broadcast as he went down to get his stuff. I watched the scrum that Curling Canada put up as well. He was visibly emotional. On TV at the end of the game, and there were tears. Like, he was crying in the post game. We saw that in North Bay. Obviously, a different emotion prompting the reaction to that. But Matt Dunstone, nobody could ever accuse this guy of not caring about curling and wanting to do well. He loves the sport. He's very invested in it, and I say this all the time, Scott, to my students when we, go to cemeteries and stuff as part of the programs I do. There's no right way or there's no wrong way to respond in these situations, where people have different emotional reactions, and however you react is correct, and that's totally fine. So if somebody doesn't have the same emotional response to a loss, like, that's okay for them. The same way it's okay for Matt Dunstone to have a very emotional response to it. And I don't want to say it's nice to see, because you hate that someone is, having that sort of going through that very tough, difficult situation for them. But at the same time, Gushue said during his scrum, like, Dunstone will win one at some point. When they get to that point where they win, it just makes it that much sweeter.
Yeah, I think so. We talked at the beginning of the week about how many teams have a chance to win this, and I rattled off 5 teams right away, and you said, I think Matt Dunstone, you can add him to that class, and I sort of poo-pooed it, but I was wrong. They clearly showed this week that they've got what it takes, and what it's going to come down to is the consistency. Yeah. That Brad Gushue talked about, right? Like, just consistency at that position. We talked about that last night. That's going to come with playing more and practicing hard, and they've got the will to do it. So the will to do it plus the talent, you got to think it's coming sometime.
Yeah, I agree. The thing with consistency, that is what we've sort of seen from this team that is missing right now. That they've went out, they won the event in North Bay, and then they missed the playoffs, and they didn't win a game at the Canada Cup. For them to get to the level that they need to be at to win these, and as we look forward to December of 2021, to be a threat, going into those Olympic trials, just a little more consistent across the board. You want to be a team where you go into a Grand Slam. We can just pencil you in to the playoffs before it starts, which I know is very difficult. Those fields are tough, but there are certain teams that we can do that, and that's the level that they want to get to, and I think that's the level that they can get to. And you're absolutely right with Matt Dunstone. There doesn't appear to be anything that will get in his way, right? Certainly, there won't. I remember Jeff Stoughton once said something like, I'll play until at lunchtime when Steve Gold comes to pick me up, until I'm like, no, I don't really want to. I don't know Matt Dunstone. I've interacted with him maybe once or twice, but just seeing him, I can't imagine a point ever in his life where he gets the call to go practice and he's like, no. Right? Like he really just seems like whatever the curling equivalent of a gym rat is.
Yeah. I think they'll have to ban curling with those duct taped up apparati before he says no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what? Really? Still? Come on.
Yeah. It is strange. Between him and Mike McEwen, is there like one piece of straw in either of those brooms?
Good question.
Yeah.
And like you can add BJ Neufeld into that.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah. Super prairies, right?
Yes. So great job, great week for Team Saskatchewan, Matt Dunstone. I think Kirk Myers is probably the biggest loser of this.
Yeah.
Their job seemingly got tougher for next year after this week. But
I think so. Yeah. Just while you're coughing there, Sean.
Yeah, thank you.
A tough week or a tough game for Braden Moskowy today. You mentioned Matt Dunstone's emotional reaction after the game. I was sort of hanging around, looking at the sheet, and I saw him go over to where his family was. He sort of hopped over the boards, got like a big hug from what I think was his mom, and he looked like he had tears in his eyes too, and it was just a tough scene to watch because he's got the same love of the game that Matt has, and like Matt played really well today. Braden was just a bit off on most of his shots. You could see even I tweeted about when Gushue swept some of his hits through that they rolled too far, and the crowd was cheering for Brad Gushue sweeping, but Braden Moskowy was sort of like, come on, really?
Right, yeah.
It's like you're cheering my miss? Come on.
Yeah.
So a tough game for him, but the two of those guys together, who knows what they'll be able to do.
Yeah, and Braden Moskowy was the low man in the game today at 75%, and just eye test certainly did struggle, especially in the second half of that game with his draw weight. So, that's one of those things where just experience. I know each of them have won national championships at the junior level as skips, but this is it's just different at the Brier.
Yeah.
So Newfoundland and Labrador gets through that game. Then they get Alberta in the final. Rested Brendan Botcher team. Apparently Darren Moulding spent the day going for a walk and helping the ice crew, which makes me happy. Apparently they needed help lifting a bunch of stuff, so he was just back there lifting stuff with the ice guys.
Well, he's a helpful guy.
He is. Ice maker's gonna ice maker. So this game, Scott, I don't know. Like it doesn't put a damper on the whole week. But we were texting back and forth, and I texted you something along the lines of, I just hope that this game is befitting of the overall quality that we've seen all week, and it just wasn't.
No.
Brendan Botcher was off in this game. They give up a steal in the first, get forced, barely even scoring in the second, facing 4, and then give up a 3. And really, Scott, I don't know. After the third end, I kind of felt like the game was over.
I it was a bit similar to what we saw in the early game, right? When Newfoundland's able to get a 3, and you think, how are these guys going to come back? Like the way that Gushue and company are playing is they're playing so well.
Yeah.
Like you're just not going to get an opportunity to get a 3 back off of them. And was it, a 2-game layoff for Team Alberta that meant they weren't into it? Did the ice change a little bit, and it was something Gushue had an advantage of because he'd played 2 straight games on that sheet? I don't know. Was it just, just didn't have it today? Maybe,
yeah.
Right?
I really think it's the latter, that they just didn't have it. In the third end, they had a chance to put pressure on Gushue, and Botcher misses a draw, and it's a double for the 3. And you saw it in the first end too, where he crashes and then he misses, he crashes and then is wide.
He's wide
on a blank attempt, and it wasn't a sharp Brendan Botcher team. We got a glimpse, I think, yesterday where they weren't quite as sharp in that 1-2 game as what we'd seen all week either, and then it got worse tonight.
Yeah, and you wonder, they can obviously pick their rocks at this point in the competition, and they seemed, I heard Brendan say, I think that second one, or first one maybe curls more than the second one. And that's not something you should be questioning in the final of a Brier, right? So yeah, I really think that switching that 1-2 with that 3-4 game yesterday was disadvantageous for them.
It's a really long time to sit around. That's for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I'm drinking water. But
That's
at
okay.
the same time, then you say, oh well, Gushue's got to play night, afternoon, night.
Yeah,
and that's a lot to play. So who knows? And the rest of the team wasn't bad. Ahead, Darren Moulding struggled a little bit in the first half of the game. Picked it up in the second half for sure. Carrick Martin looked hurt to me.
He wasn't. His brush strokes when he was sweeping were not very long.
No, and there was a lot of times when Brad was sort of repositioning his body to try and make it curl from the other side of the ice. So it just seemed to me like there's maybe something wrong that he hurt at some point and wasn't 100%. Maybe something like we saw with Jeff Walker a couple of years ago.
Yeah, maybe.
So tough there when if one of your sweepers isn't at 100%, it can really change the outcome of a game.
Yeah, and he was certainly louder today than he's been all week. He has a tendency to have this ongoing groan sometimes on the end-to-end sweeps. Today was louder. So right. that would lead me to believe that something may not have felt great with Carrick Martin.
Yeah, so that's pure speculation on our part, but
that's what we do.
Why not? Yeah. That all of that said, for as bad, quote unquote bad as the Botcher team was today, Brad Gushue shot 97%. He didn't miss anything.
Yeah, no one. I don't think anyone was beating Brad Gushue tonight. They were so good, and I gotta say, we talk about Mark Kennedy a lot, and rightfully so. Mark Kennedy is great. Mark Nichols, when he is on, is, oh my God, it's the game wasn't great. Let's not sort of say that it was great. But from a pure shot making standpoint, Mark Nichols is unbelievable, and it's almost unfair. Yes, Darren Moulding struggled, especially in the first half of the game, but you have Mark Nichols over there making everything. Just he's making doubles for fun.
Yeah,
it's really quite something. And when Mark Nichols is doing that, and then Brad Gushue is doing what Brad Gushue is doing, I don't know if anybody could beat them, or at the very least, I would like to see somebody else whose back end is also making everything try, because that would be an absolute doozy. But if you're 85% going up against what those two guys were doing tonight, you're going to lose every time.
Yeah, and it's also disheartening, right, for
Yeah.
the team that's trying to make a comeback, and they're seeing Mark Nichols make these doubles and going like, where are we supposed to put our rocks? Like,
Yeah. In the eighth end, they were set up pretty good, and then Mark Nichols throws, and then Gushue throws his first, and then he's facing. And Brenton Bottcher was looking at maybe scoring 3 to facing 2.
yeah.
And trying a crazy run double that Russ certainly didn't think was there to try and get a 2 and gives up a steal, and then the game was really over. But it is like it has to just take it out of you for all night to slowly start to try and get some momentum, and then just like that, Nichols or Gushue is making these shots. It's really that has to be so hard for a team.
Yeah, Sean. So Megan texted me today during that shot, or right after that shot that was attempted in the 8th for the 2, and she said, "Why?" And I said, "He didn't like the draw, and Sean has told me to let the skip throw what they like." To which she replied, "Unless that thing is truly insane, true insanity." And I said, "I'll remember that for tomorrow." So.
I mean,
yeah,
but the thing with that shot is, at that point of the game, why not?
Right. And if the skip likes it,
yeah,
and why not? Like, okay, try.
Yeah, I mean, you throw draw, you're probably going to lose the game. You throw that and you miss it, you're probably going to lose the game. So what the hell's the difference? Like, give it a go.
It reminded me a bit though of Rachel Homan's decision in the 9th end of the Scotties final, where she had a like pretty impossible shot to maybe get 3 versus a certain shot to get 2, and the certain shot would put her 2 down with 1 end to go. But like Emma Miskey said, well, I don't think we're going to win if we're 2 down. But then she stole 2 points, so you never know what's going to happen. Maybe if you get your 1 there instead of giving the steal, you can, I don't know, steal the next 3 ends.
I mean, maybe, but even at that, like the draw wasn't a sure thing, especially the way he was throwing.
Yeah.
And they had to go pretty wide out to make it. I mean, it's not like the draw was a gimme.
No, for sure. And like you said, either you're going to lose it there or you're going to lose it in 2 ends, so who cares?
Yeah. So give it a go. Try a fun one.
Yeah.
So with that, Scott, Gushue does have to throw his last in the 10th. He almost made a double on his first. Just barely bites. And then, I said it on Twitter that someone was like, oh, you might not have to throw it all. I think he called Mark Nichols' shots so that he could throw. Right? He definitely wanted to end it himself, it seemed like.
Yeah, he didn't want Mark to make the double and get all the glory.
No. So Brad Gushue makes it on his last, scores 1. 7-3 is the final. Scott, 3rd time in 4 years for Brad Gushue after years and years and years of them not, or of him not winning a Brier. He won that gold medal in 2006 at the Olympic Games, and for over a decade he continued to say that he was the only player in the country who would rather win a Brier than an Olympic gold medal, because he already had the gold medal. But he wanted it so bad, got it in St. John's back in 2017 in just a super memorable final, then got the repeat the year after. Now in 2020, 3 times in 4 years, and I think, Scott, that for Brad Gushue, I don't know if this will be his last cycle as a competitive curler, but certainly there's no questions anymore about whether or not he deserves to be up there with the Coeys of the world, the Martins, the Howards, right? The Stoutons.
Oh,
he is. There were questions for a while. Now there's
that's
not.
Fair. No, now there's not. I think as soon as he won his first, and then got the world championship on top of it, no questions there. So I just wonder if there's.
No, go ahead.
I wonder if there's another street in St. John's they can name after him.
I don't know. Maybe it'll just be St. Brad's at some point.
Hey, there you go. I like that. Sure.
So of course the other big winner tonight is the entirety of the Newfoundland and Labrador men's competitive curling field, who now that's wide open again. Greg Smith even was tweeting about it during the game that as a competitive men's curler in Newfoundland, go Gushue.
Sure.
Opens up a spot.
Yeah, and we'll see how many teams they get in the playdowns there this year. They had quite a few still this year.
Yeah.
With Gushue competing, but always fun to get a new face off the rock for Brier week.
Absolutely. And let's turn our attention now, Scott. Brendan Botcher, Team Alberta, third straight loss in a Brier final. Two of those to Brad Gushue, of course, last year to Kevin Cooey. I would say last year's game for them would still have to be the toughest one because Cooey made an incredible shot to win it on the last one. This one was pretty thorough in terms of a defeat. They were full fare for this one. But I don't know if, just given the way the week went, they were the best team all week. You know, they only lost once up until tonight, and they didn't. The stat that TSN put up that until tonight they had not trailed by 2 or more all week is incredible, and I kind of didn't believe it, but. Because, that's insane that's possible. So, I don't know. In terms of the individual game, the one last year, this is just a gut punch at the end. But this one, given how well they played all week, how in control they were all week, I think this one, and it's the third one, there's got to be some sort of compounding interest on it, that this one will sting for a while.
Yeah, I think so. And like you say, they were 2 games clear of the rest of the field, but it was quiet. It was a quiet 10-1, if that's possible, given all the noise around. Dunstone with the run back, Gunner with the run back for the win, Brad Jacobs making shots with his back against the wall. It seemed like they were never the story of the Brier this year.
No,
and
that's right.
And So yeah, they were the best team during the week, record-wise. But it was a very sort of unassuming, workman-like effort they put in. It was sort of, we expect to be that. It's good. We're pretty good at curling, and that's that. So it doesn't, as a story, to me, them losing this game doesn't feel as big a deal as last year's did, where they were sort of the upstart, and like you say, Cooey made a crazy shot to win. So to me, that last year would sting more. And I don't know why I don't think this one would, but sometimes it's easier if it's a blowout to sort of say, oh well,
we didn't have
not
a chance.
Our game.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance. So you're right. So it's tough for them, I'm sure, but making 3 finals in a row is really good. So in the clear light of day, obviously you want to win one. Obviously, you probably want to win all 3 of them, but to get to 3 in a row is, especially in Alberta, I know one of them was as the wild card team, but to be in 3 Briers in a row out of Alberta, even if they had the benefit of Cooey being Team Canada this year, they still had to come through and win 2 Alberta championships, which is something on its own. They had to win the wild card game last year, and then to get to those points is incredibly difficult and impressive. Then to get through these fields, to get through the playoffs, to be in 3 finals, it's super impressive. And the question is, is it Buffalo, early 90s Buffalo Bills-esque, where the Bills get to 4 straight Super Bowls and lose them all? I'm still impressed by the fact that you get there. You can't lose them unless you're there, and getting there is really hard. And there's 15 other teams this week, if you include Glenn Howard's team, who would gladly take the second place prize and lose the final compared to the way their week ended up.
Yeah, probably. And like you say, those Bills teams were great, no matter that they lost 4 in a row. And we were talking about before this, and you said, no, they're not the Bills yet. They need to lose one more.
Yeah, next year.
So, yeah, there's always next year, right? And, as opposed to a team sport like football, where you've got a huge roster, you've got salary caps, stuff like that, you don't have those things in curling. So these guys can stay together as long as they want and keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. And they certainly will to the end of the cycle. We'll see what happens next year, based on points and all that. Cooey didn't play a lot this year. Botcher's team, I don't think they were I think they were like 4th or 5th on the CTRS. So, if you're looking at next year, do either of those teams start to play a little bit more with the hopes of, if you lose Alberta, make sure that you get a spot in the wild card game? I would doubt that anyone would set their schedule based on that. But Alberta next year, Carsten Sturme probably was cheering pretty hard for Brendan Botcher tonight, as was Ted Appleman, I'm sure. So, Alberta's, it's always a slog, but it's going to be another one next year.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know, Scotty. Anything else from the Brier? Any other big takeaways for you that we haven't talked about?
It was, I think, for my first Brier, being there for the full week, it was an amazing show put on by the city of Kingston. Big thanks. I tweeted this earlier, but big thanks to all the volunteers. I've been a volunteer a few times, and it's a super important role in these events. Like, without volunteers, these aren't happening. So big thanks to all the volunteers I saw. It was pretty fun to meet some of the other people on the media bench, some of the fans out there, some of the players even, for giving us even just a couple minutes of their time. Was pretty special, pretty cool. And I'm already looking forward to the next one, Sean.
Yeah. We'll see what the next one is.
Yeah, we don't know yet, but we'll see.
We'll get to something at some point.
Yeah. Maybe will there be an announcement soon for something, you think?
I do think there will be an announcement soon for something, which we will wait until that announcement is made, lest we potentially are wrong. But I feel confident about an announcement in the near future that will benefit us.
Cool. And good luck to everybody in Prince George next week. I guess we got to get together and talk about that one.
Yeah, so that'll be our next episode, talking about the Women's World Championship out there in Prince George, British Columbia. Scott, I have an announcement. We are not going to be doing daily coverage of either World Championships.
Yeah, no. Both of our healths have suffered a bit, and it's been fun. But we'll be on Twitter for sure talking about it. Curling is fun. We like it. So we'll definitely be talking about it, but we'll do like a full recap at the end of the event, barring any sort of craziness that happens during the round robin.
Absolutely, and we'll have our full preview of the women's field later in the week. We'll do a recap once it's all over, and same with the men. We'll do a full men's preview and then a men's recap. Although you're going to be solo on that men's recap, Scotty.
Oh boy. Lucky me.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll talk to somebody about being some special guests or something.
There you go. That's a good idea. I like that. So yeah, let me just echo your thoughts too about Kingston, really fantastic job. We were there for the opening weekend of the Scotties back in 2013, and I remember it was good, and the city had done a nice job, but this one blew it absolutely out of the water. Having the patch right there is essential for any curling events, so that really helps with the atmosphere. Overall, Kingston posted, man.
Oh man,
they showed up. The first weekend was great. I thought there would be a dip. There's obviously always a little bit of a dip early in the week, but it was never. We didn't see, even during the day draws, like we didn't see quarter filled, the building a quarter full. So great job by Kingston.
Yeah, the attendance for all of the weekend draws, like today's draws and last night, was over 5,000 people, almost 5,000 for yesterday afternoon's tiebreaker / 1-2 game, and they even put in almost 4,300 people for those tiebreakers Saturday morning. So pretty insane numbers. They almost got to 100,000 for the event. So they had a total of 24 draws, and in an arena that seats about 5,200, 5,500 maybe.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane.
Yeah, the low draw, looking at the attendance, was Monday afternoon at 3,054. That was the low draw of the week. That's unbelievable. Great job, Kingston.
Yeah, great job by Kingston and all the fans that came from elsewhere. It was, you could see everyone from all over the country there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so great job all around. It was a great field, a great venue, great job by Kingston. Just a wonderful Brier 2020, and congratulations to Newfoundland and Labrador, Brad Gushue, third time as the Brier champion, and they are going to get to go to Edinburgh. I think it's Edinburgh.
It's Glasgow.
It's Glasgow.
Oh, that was a worse try than your Edinburgh. I apologize.
So Glasgow, Scotland, for the men's World Curling Championship. So that'll put a bow on the 2020 Tim Hortons Brier. What a week it was. Good week. So thanks to everybody for following along with us all week, both online with through social media and through the podcast. It's been a lot of episodes. I haven't been feeling great throughout the whole thing. I feel okay now, but my throat's still a little sore. But even with that, it's been a lot of fun following along, watching the games, keeping track of what's been going on with social media. So thank you to everybody for sticking with us over the past 9 days. We really do appreciate it. And as always, we appreciate you listening and engaging with us. It really makes the entire curling experience a lot more fun. So thank you, everybody. Of course, if you have not yet, please do subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, all the places. Gives the likes, the ratings, keeps the show going, lets other people find out what's going on. You can also follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Game of Stones Pod. Scott's there at Scott Likes TV. I'm at Dr. Shawnee Fever, and as always, you can email the show at gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. So we will be back with you later in the week to talk about the 2020 Women's World Curling Championship. But until then, keep your brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.